This is Speak of the Devils on AZ Family Sports.
Welcome to Speak of the Devils, the premier television show for Sun Devil football coverage. I'm Brad Denny with 3TV and CBS 5.
And I'm Joe Healey with DevilsDigest.com.
Joe, another week, another familiar refrain for the Sun Devils. They put forth an effort that was good enough in many respects to win a game, a conference game, a road game at that. But ultimately, they did just enough to come home with a loss.
It was a challenging game, a challenging circumstance. It is a challenging season. And I think at this point, we kind of have to see it for what it is. It may be a little bit of a long one. The gains and the increases and the victories even themselves may not be true wins as far as the scorebook and the record book are concerned. So, yes, it was a frustrating loss. Like we talked about last week, I didn't foresee any circumstance. We didn't foresee any circumstance where ASU could go up to Berkeley, come back with a loss, and have it be a rejuvenating moral victory as you saw against USC the week before. And that is where things are. As you mentioned, it was a winnable game. It was a game that realistically ASU should have won, did not. So there are matters to discuss, items to focus on. Some of the same old tunes that have been sung so far this season continue to be sung. So we'll make some sense of it best we can here on the show.
Yeah, so let's dive into ASU's 24-21 loss at California. Now, this is a game where ASU, of course, is coming in with the caveats of having an extensive injured list. And that list only grew as the game went on. And yet the Sun Devils were in control of the game and they're kind of their fate towards the end in the fourth quarter, just like they were a week ago when they were hosting number 5 USC. And again, they just made a few mistakes. There was a crucial 12-man illegal substitution penalty that negated a touchdown pass in the third quarter that would have really put ASU kind of in a great spot to win the game. In the fourth quarter, a couple of penalties. Now, ASU, of course, Joe, has not been as nearly as penalized as the Herm Edwards era, but this time they were hurt by in terms of not the quantity, but the quality and the timing of those penalties, ultimately coming away with a loss that kind of derailed a pretty good defensive effort and some positive signs on the offense.
Yeah, I mean, you had Trent Bourget thrown for 344 yards. I mean, no matter how you slice it, that's a solid effort right there. Of course, there was an interception, didn't take any sacks. The ASU on defense got to the quarterback a couple times, limited that pass game for California. Not that it was a standout effort the season to date in the pass game for the Bears. The run game, once again, though, against ASU, the Devils got slashed there quite a bit, allowing 196 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground, 165 yards to starting tailback Jaden Ott for Cal. So once again, there are some themes of this season. We'll see how things progress if they progress. There are also elements about this year for ASU to where you kind of have to get into survival mode, get through things, all these injuries. The postseason ban is and has been a cloud that remains with this program. So you want to get through to the best of the ability with this season, move on to the future. I'm not trying to write off this season. I'm not trying to excuse it or say it doesn't count because it all certainly does. But man, ASU is backed up against the wall in quite a few ways right now.
Yeah, and Kenny himself has even said after the games that kind of the record doesn't matter this year. And of course, referencing the postseason ban. And, perhaps that might be because he's always been a bit of a gambler, but perhaps that has lended to some of those fourth down decisions. ASU has been among the more aggressive teams in the country in going for fourth down. They went for fourth down with some mixed results against Cal, as they have done all season long. But, this is all season that he just says is simply put about getting better. And last week against USC, we saw this team get better, make some strides. They had a chance to take the lead against one of the elite teams in the country late in the football game. This week, they did make some gains, but I think overall kind of felt like a step back. As you mentioned, Joe, we both thought that ASU should win this game. This is a Cal team that isn't exactly world beaters on either side of the ball. The defense continued to play well, but ultimately kind of those fourth down decisions that didn't work in terms of the field position battle and some poor punting, put their backs against the wall. Just ultimately, they wore down with the lion's share of that rushing yard allowed coming in that critical fourth quarter. But ultimately, you get a way different feel this week as opposed to the last week's loss, as weird as that might sound.
When you have risky plays, you love them when they work. You hate them when they don't work. That's pretty much the fan narrative, whether that's going for it on fourth down, fake punts and field goals, 2-point conversions, things like that. There's a lot of excitement when it pays off, a lot of anger when it doesn't. And you saw that among the social media discourse from this game. And yes, it's being done quite a bit more than I think we've ever seen, especially in consecutive games. I think that that's really a testament of just trying to get some energy, some excitement going on with this team, trying to make progress however you can. Admitting that, like you talked about with Kenny Dillingham, understanding that, okay, there is no postseason. The record does not impact the team as much this year as it normally would. So you can take some risks that maybe you wouldn't otherwise. So on a general scale, I don't really hate it. You want to be judicious with it. Of course, there have been issues with ASU's punt game, which factors into going for it on 4th down so regularly. So like I said, once again, it's wonderful when it works out for these, long completions and touchdowns and things like that. When it doesn't, there's going to be some criticism. So it's a high risk, high reward type of philosophy. We'll see if ASU continues along through that. I kind of think maybe they will. We'll see. And if it starts to pay off, that could be a good thing. But there are some gambles, some risks that are going on this season that you just otherwise wouldn't see because it's an atypical season from what we normally know around here.
Yeah, and Kenny Dillingham, just continuing as the primary play caller for this offense. One thing I did really like, the continued use of those playmakers, Elijah Badger, Jalen Conyers. We saw Melquan Stovall and Giovanni Sanders get far more involved in this offense, as well as the heart and soul and folk hero Cam Scadaboo having another big game with on the ground as a pass catcher, and Joe, of course, with throwing the ball a little bit around as well. But ultimately, the injuries continue to pile up. The offensive line has been dinged up a little bit. Of course, the quarterback position has been hit. The defense also took a number of key losses that we'll dive into in our game preview because the Sun Devils have a big-time home showdown against probably the most talked about team, pro or college this season, in Colorado coming up this Saturday. It's going to be a very interesting game and probably another game that's going to tell us a lot about this team. But after the break, we're going to be talking to a couple of key Sun Devils that had some moments of shine last week in Sha Naah and Xavier Guillory. Welcome back to Speak of the Devils. Now, Joe, of course, this season has been almost kind of defined by the injured list that the Sun Devils have been facing week in, week out. That continues to grow in a lot of key areas. And that also just means that there's got to be a lot of opportunities for guys to step up.
The next man up mentality is a big thing in college sports, college football. You've seen it at the quarterback position, offensive line. There have been too many times ASU's been able to say next man up over the course of these first 5 games of the season. On defense, one linebacker, Caleb McCullough, had by far his best game as a Sun Devil. 7 tackles, 2 for loss with 1 sack. So he's an example, and there are a few others of guys who've been thrown into action but have answered the bell when they're called.
Yeah, so we'll talk to a couple after Tuesday's practice. Had a chance to catch up with wide receiver Xavier Guillory, and first up, offensive lineman Sha Naah. So getting some continued first-team reps out there with the offense today. What was that experience like for you?
Oh, it was great. Coming in with the older guys is cool. They make it easy for me. Transition is good because they're good with communicating and letting me know little things that can help me out. So it's good. It's great.
Overall, what's the last couple of weeks been like for you, just kind of in preparation? Obviously seeing the unfortunate kind of attrition with injuries on the offensive line, but also, knowing that your numbers must be called.
Yeah, it was, at first it was a little stressful because I was like, I'm playing tackle, now I'm playing guard, but I'm just embracing the moment, trusting the process, trusting what Coach D has for me, and just, like I said, just going to the older guys and they're making it easy for me.
Are there any particular guys, the veterans that have really kind of helped bring you along, get you in the flow?
Oh, yeah. Kay Briggs, Lee Faltanu, Joey Ramos, all the older guys. All the guys in the room, basically, just making it easy for me. Just give me little tips, like I said, make it easy.
Well, what was it like just, not having Coach Tuatele out there, of the last couple of weeks?
At first I was going to be like, I thought it was going to be a little hard, but Coach Christensen and Coach Miller made it easy for us. It felt like Coach T was still there. So yeah, it didn't feel really different at all.
And how good was it though to have him back? He was still, it seemed like he was fired up as usual and still as energetic as his old self.
Yeah, it was great. I saw him yesterday morning. I was hyped for him. I was happy. Give him a little hug. Let him know I was happy that he was back. It was great having him back.
Ultimately, going back in between, guard and tackle, as you mentioned, having that versatility. But do you feel that, it'd be easier early on in your career just to maybe kind of learn one spot, or do you feel that taking on the challenge of being versatile kind of right off the bat is something that suits you?
Yeah, I feel like I can do it. I like how I'm pretty versatile, like you said, how I can play both. Like you said, just embracing the challenge, trusting the process, and just trusting what Coach T has for me, and doing what I got to do to help the team be successful.
Why was Arizona State the right place for you?
Close to home, and I had a great relationship with Coach Tuatele when he was at Fresno State. So just staying in touch with him, and it was great. great decision coming.
Where have you seen kind of just like kind of the collective mindset and kind of morale of the offensive line? Going through some ups and downs during the first 5 weeks of the season, some injuries, having some good performance out there, but ultimately not getting the wins that you guys want.
Yeah, the older boys, like I said, they keep the morale up, they keep us up. The young guys, whenever we're down, they tell us to keep our chin up no matter what. We have a thing called 1SB, one snap brotherhood. It's an online thing, and we're just trying to keep each other up no matter what.
All right, so looking ahead to a big game against Colorado, obviously a lot of hype behind those guys so far this season. What kind of jumps out to you about this Colorado defense, some of the things that they like to do?
They're up front, they're really strong. D-line, very, very powerful. But just focusing on what we got to do to be successful is the main thing for us, main plan for us. And yeah, they're a great team. Really excited to go out there on Saturday and play against those guys.
You got half a season of college ball, on the under the belt. What are the goals for the rest of the year? What would you like to kind of finish this year strong on?
Just get more comfortable with playing, because even though I played at Cal, I was a little nervous here and there. But yeah, just get more comfortable, and I'm trying to shoot for a Pac-12 freshman All-American. That's a big goal for me, and just help the team out as much as I can, and put us in the best position possible.
Overall, how would you kind of evaluate the offense's performance against Cal, coming off a better performance against USC a week ago?
It was an improvement. He's got to finish and capitalize on little things, and we just got to focus on the mental part. Those mental mistakes that separate us from having a 40-point game to a 24-point game. So just a little stuff that we're working on and getting down.
How do you see kind of the offense's mentality, kind of collective mindset, coming off? Obviously kind of the wins aren't there, but it seems like week in, week out, there's some improvements being made.
Yeah, the mindset hasn't really changed, man. We just have the same goal. It's a process. We just got to learn a new offense and get with a quarterback. And, now we got a solidified quarterback just coming in and just develop a relationship with him, just kind of get some team offensive chemistry going.
What's it like, just having, Trent back there now, kind of as the guy that and rather than not having a different guy back there each and every week?
Yeah, just to build timing. I feel like this team just needs to build chemistry. It's hard for any team just to come in with a entirely new offense with a bunch of players coming in. So we been 5 games, so head into game 6, hopefully we can get some chemistry going and just build that offensive relationship.
Where do you see kind of the gains and kind of the rapport and the chemistry now that you guys have 5 games of experience, basically almost half a season kind of together now at this point?
It's just we're getting closer, man, and it's just day by day, man, just enjoying the process, and it's just something that we got to continue to build, man. Like I said, just day by day, just stacking. It's not gonna be overnight, man. It's just a process, but we're not as far as people think, man. It could be overnight turns, so we can do something really good. This program's gonna be special the next coming years for sure.
Where have you seen kind of the biggest impact in terms of Kenny being more involved with the offense, taking over the play calling, and just kind of for the first 3 games versus the last 2?
So he's just he's trying to get the ball in his playmakers' hands. A lot of linemen down, a lot of quarterbacks down, a lot of key people down. So we're just trying our best with what we have, and he's trying. He's doing well. Like obviously it's his offense, so for us too, just building that chemistry with Coach Kenny, knowing what he's going to call, and kind of getting that that relationship down, even with the head coach and the play caller now. So that's a big step moving forward. What
do you see from the Colorado defense and kind of your preparation and film study?
Yeah, so we're just gonna have to score a lot of points, man. They're a hard-playing team, man. They fly around. A lot of hungry dudes out there, so it's something that we need to go and attack.
Welcome back to Speak of the Devils. This Saturday, Colorado's coming to town to face off against Kenny Dillingham's Sun Devils, and that means that Coach Deion Sanders, probably the most talked about figure in college sports this season, is going to be bringing his team down here. And just in the nature of these parallels of first-year head coaches in the Pac-12, 2 guys who greatly overhauled their rosters, those 2 have kind of drawn a lot of comparisons from fans, some folks in the media. But I think in a lot of key ways, that's probably a mistaken course of action.
Yeah, it has really been an interesting thing. Since Deion Sanders was hired at Colorado, that made waves. The things he did in the transfer portal, that made waves. All of the off-field things and the media things, that has made waves. And in many respects, that's a positive thing, especially if you're a Colorado fan. If you're an ASU fan, yeah, it's kind of natural to do some comparing, especially when you see Colorado almost literally everywhere in the sports media, especially in the early part of the season, while ASU struggles, while ASU has a postseason ban, while fans are trying to think, what's it going to take to get back up that mountain in college football? So again, it's kind of natural for there to be some comparisons. A lot of ASU fans said, why didn't ASU hire Deion Sanders? Now, my personal opinion is ASU still got it right, because you need a passionate Sun Devil in this position to bring things back to a positive standing. But what he's done there has been impressive. Now, obviously, there are supporters and there are detractors, and I think both sides are fine. You know, we've seen some things, especially on social media, where some folks say, how can you not love Deion Sanders? How can you not love what he's doing? I get that. Not everybody loves it. There are just fans that don't cheer for every single team. There are some fans that may not prefer some of the flash and the celebrities and things like that. It just may not be for them, and that's perfectly fine. But it certainly is working in Colorado as far as the fan base, certainly with the national media. They've been winning some games. They're 3-2. So there is success there as well. A couple different personalities in Kenny Dillingham and Deion Sanders. So it's going to be a real interesting matchup this Saturday in Mountain America Stadium.
Yeah, kind of a comparison and contrast of styles. And I do think that Deion Sanders is fantastic and great for college football. The attention that he's bringing to the sport, the ability to bring new people in, new viewership. Obviously, the viewership numbers each and every week have been extraordinary for a team that's coming off a 1-11 year. But as you mentioned, Joe, perhaps the style may rub some people the wrong way, but ultimately I think it's a net positive. But you look at the situation at Colorado and the situation that Kenny Dillingham walked into at Arizona State, and I think they're very different. Obviously, Arizona State has kind of the cloud of the NCAA investigation continue to hang over, coming off of one of the most disappointing seasons in program history, off 3-9 a season ago, and turning over that roster. This is with new coordinators. Installing this culture is going to take time, and people are going to look at Deion and think, well, why can't ASU do that? Or why can't the schools that might have a vacancy in the future have that? Deion is one of one. There's no way to I think anybody's going to be able to replicate that. ASU and Kenny Dillingham is going to be a long process. So I think there were judgments that are being thrown around now by some fans, Joe. Perhaps after week 5 in year 1, no, that's not the way to go. Come back to me, after week 5 and week 3, perhaps.
Yeah. I've seen several ASU fans that say, ASU should have hired Deion Sanders. Why can't they get a coach that does what Deion did at Colorado? My response is, can you name one other guy ever really that's done what Deion's doing at Colorado? When you factor in social media and the way that things are now in the transfer portal and NIL and the difference in the college football landscape now versus any time in the past, there is no precedent. So like you said, it's a one-of-one situation. Good for them. Now, the natural question to bring up, and I've introduced this to some Colorado fans on social media, and it becomes an instant attack, is he there for the long haul? That remains to be seen, because from an outsider's perspective, you just wonder how long he's going to be there, because his stock is so high, because it's likely and plausible that there could be some major openings in the next couple of years. If you just kind of look down the trend lines, it wouldn't shock me if in the next 2 to 3 years that places like Texas A&M or Alabama, some of the Florida schools might come open. It can be difficult for him to turn that down, or even the NFL. He's going to have just about every offer on the table that he wants. We'll see what that turns into. We can't predict the future, but again, with a guy whose stock is rising as high as it is, and such a known commodity as he is in the sports world, it makes sense to think that those moves might be ahead in the future.
ASU taking the slow and steady approach to program rebuilding. Colorado, kind of the instant just add water approach. And so we'll see, ultimately after a couple of years, where each program is and how viable and sustainable those programs are in that aspect. But after the break, we're going to be breaking down the matchup, ASU versus Colorado.
Welcome back to Speak of the Devils. ASU welcomes to Tempe this weekend the most talked about head coach in all of college sports, of course, the Colorado Buffaloes, guided by Deion Sanders. It's a 3-2 team. There's a lot of energy, a lot of excitement. Ripped off those first 3 wins to get the season started. Nobody was being talked about more than Colorado and Deion Sanders. Now, they have lost their last 2 games, fairly embarrassing fashion against Oregon in the Pac-12 opener for Colorado. Last week, they made it a competitive game against USC with a second-half surge, but still took the loss against the Trojans. So this is a big game for both teams, as Colorado is still looking toward bowl eligibility, still looking toward a very successful season, especially compared to what happened before Deion Sanders arrived. So to take a quick look at some of the personnel with this team. Shedeur Sanders, of course, Deion's son at quarterback, statistically one of the very best in the country. He transferred in from Jackson State, of course, following his father to Colorado. He averages more than 350 passing yards per game, completes about 75% of his passes, has 15 touchdown throws to only 2 interceptions. But that Colorado offense, fairly one-dimensional, as we have talked about. Some incredible talent at wide receiver, some names to keep in mind: Xavier Weaver, Jimmy Horn Jr., Omarion Miller. He had a breakout performance last week. One name, a very important name that you very likely will not see out there on Saturday, Travis Hunter, the two-way standout, the bona fide first-round NFL pick. He is suffering injury issues. He should still be out for a couple weeks. The offensive line, as good as the offensive skill players have been, the O-line has been quite an issue for Colorado. They've allowed 26 sacks on the year. Defensively, they're allowing teams to score some points. They've been in some high-scoring, close affairs that they've obviously won more than they've lost, but that is a tough way to keep gambling through if the defense doesn't show up for Colorado.
It's going to be a big game for both teams, so let's dive into our keys for a Sun Devil victory. And as Joe mentioned, the Colorado team is one-dimensional of one-dimensional, because their defense is not really good, but their offense is very potent. But that offense is very one-sided in terms of leaning on the pass game. The run game has struggled. ASU's run defense has struggled over the last couple of weeks. So what you should do, continue to make sure that they stay one-dimensional. You got a lot to deal with through the air, so make sure that they do not be able to establish some momentum on the ground against you.
ASU has to do that. The run defense the last couple weeks for the Sun Devils has been very concerning. As we know, last year it was a major issue. If you allow Colorado to run the ball kind of like they did in the second half against USC last week, that's going to create a lot of options for them on offense, and that will create a very long day for the home team.
All right, key number 2, and staying on the defensive side, just continue to be more aggressive, force the issue, bring the attack. The Colorado offensive line has struggled. They've let the opponents make a lot of plays behind that line of scrimmage. So Brian Ward might dial up some more blitzes, get some sacks, get some TFLs that hopefully will result in some big-time plays, some game-changing type plays in the form of turnovers, something that ASU has done a pretty poor job of so far this year.
And I'm going to repeat that one, say it louder for the people in the back. Colorado is next to last in the country in terms of sacks allowed, and in the bottom 5 in TFLs allowed. ASU should be able to get into the backfield, do some damage against the Buffs.
No, key number 3 for ASU's offense: run the ball, control the clock, control that tempo, because that Buffalo defense, especially up front, has not been good at stopping the run. Kenny Dillingham said that the run game's got to get going. There's some flashes over the last couple of weeks. He said he wants to use more misdirection, so you might see some more motion, some pre-snap shifts in terms of getting that run game and getting some spaces going for Cameron Scadaboo and company, because the good way to keep Colorado from scoring on you is if you keep the ball and keep that offense of theirs on the sideline.
So let's talk about how we see this one playing out. If ASU would have come home from Berkeley with the dub last week, I'd feel a little bit more encouraged about this game, even though Colorado has suffered back-to-back losses. Just don't yet see this one working out for the Sun Devils, picking a 34-24 Colorado win.
Kind of on a similar note, ASU continues to make strides week after week. Some flashes are shining through of what this program wants to be, but ultimately they continue to do just enough to lose. And I think that's a script that's going to kind of play out yet again in Tempe on Saturday afternoon. I think the offense is going to get going a little bit, be able to score on that susceptible Buff defense, but ultimately I think the Colorado offense is going to be a little bit too much. I think Colorado comes away with a 31-27 victory over the Sun Devils, and as the ASU team will head into the bye week. But for much more in-depth analysis and some additional interviews as we dive into this matchup and much more, make sure you subscribe to Speak of the Devils everywhere you get your podcasts: Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We're also on YouTube. So next week, we're going to have a nice roundtable discussion as we look at the first half of the 2023 season and hand out some midterm grades.